Late one evening, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town, a high-ranking FBI captain found himself staring down the barrel of a police officer's gun. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off his badge, but at that moment, it didn't seem to matter. The officers surrounding him didn't care who he was. All they saw was the color of his skin. What started as a routine drive home quickly turned into a nightmare. He had been with the FBI for over a decade, an experienced investigator, someone who had dedicated his life to justice. But that night, justice was nowhere in sight. As he reached into his jacket to show his identification, the officer tensed up, fingers tightening on the trigger. The cold night air was thick with tension. He knew exactly what could happen next. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and his life could be over. He kept his voice calm. "I'm FBI. I have my badge right here." But the officers didn't listen. Instead, they shoved him against the hood of his own car, roughly twisting his arms behind his back. The metal cuffs bit into his wrists as they locked into place. His heart pounded. This wasn't just an arrest. It felt personal. It felt wrong. As they dragged him toward the squad car, the reality of the situation hit him. He wasn't being treated as an officer of the law. He wasn't even being treated as a citizen. He was being treated as a threat, without cause, without reason. The people who were supposed to uphold the law were the ones abusing it. By the time they reached the station, word had already spread through the department. Some officers looked uneasy, whispering amongst themselves. Others smirked, as if enjoying the humiliation of a man who, under different circumstances, might have been their superior. But no one spoke up. No one questioned what was happening. He was fingerprinted, photographed, and thrown into a holding cell like a common criminal. No explanations, no rights read to him, no chance to make a call. He sat on the cold bench, his mind racing. Was this a mistake, or was it intentional? Hours passed, and yet no one came to release him. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. He had worked cases involving corruption before. He had seen what happened when power fell into the wrong hands. But he never imagined he'd be on the receiving end of it. Then, just as the first light of morning crept through the barred window, the heavy metal door creaked open. A shadow loomed in the doorway, a familiar face, someone he thought he could trust. But the look in their eyes told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't over. In fact, it was only the beginning. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, and as the dim light hit his face, the FBI captain felt a sharp sting of betrayal. It was someone he knew, someone from his past, a fellow officer, a man he once considered a friend. But there was no warmth in his expression now, only something colder, harder. "You shouldn't have been out there last night," the man said, his voice low but firm. The captain didn't respond right away. He was still trying to process what was happening. Why was he here? Why was no one acknowledging his position? He wasn't just another man off the street. He was federal law enforcement, but none of that seemed to matter. Is this a mistake, or is this something else? The captain finally asked, his voice controlled but sharp. The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck like he was carrying a weight too heavy for him. "You should just sit tight for now. Things might get complicated." Complicated. That word made the captain's stomach tighten. He had spent years unraveling corruption, investigating officers who abused their power, exposing those who thought they were untouchable. Had he gotten too close to something? Had he unknowingly walked into a trap? The officer turned to leave, but before he could step away, the captain spoke again. "Tell me one thing," he said, his voice low. "Was this planned?" A long pause filled the air between them. Then, without another word, the officer walked out, the heavy metal door clanking shut behind him. The captain sat back against the cold concrete wall, his mind racing. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It wasn't just a traffic stop gone wrong. Someone had wanted him here. Someone had made sure he was taken off the streets. But why? He replayed the events of the night before in his head, trying to find the moment where things had shifted. The officers who pulled him over, had they known who he was from the start? Had they been following him? Or was this about something bigger? He thought back to his latest case, an investigation into a network of officers accused of misconduct. The deeper he had dug, the more resistance he had faced. Was it possible that someone on the inside had decided to shut him down? Hours passed, but no one came to let him go. No phone call, no explanation. The longer he sat in that cell, the more certain he became. This wasn't just about a traffic stop. This was about power, control, silence, and whoever was behind it had no intention of letting him walk away so easily. But they had underestimated him, because if there was one thing he knew how to do, it was uncover the truth. And he wasn't going to stop until he found it. The hours inside the cell stretched endlessly, each second feeding the uneasy feeling growing in the captain's chest. He had faced dangerous situations before, undercover operations gone wrong, high-stakes interrogations, moments where the line between life and death blurred. But this was different. This wasn't just about him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was calculated. Footsteps echoed down the hallway again, but this time, it wasn't the familiar face of the officer who had visited earlier. It was someone new. A man in a neatly pressed suit, carrying a folder under his arm. His expression was unreadable as he stepped up to the bars, peering in like he was studying something beneath glass. "You've been making a lot of noise lately," the man finally said, flipping open the folder. "Digging into places you shouldn't be." The captain didn't respond. He wasn't about to give this man the satisfaction of a reaction. The suited man continued flipping through the folder, nodding slowly as if confirming something to himself. "Tell me, Captain, did you really think they were going to let you get away with it?" Still, the captain said nothing. He was listening, watching, waiting. If he had learned anything over the years, it was that people loved to hear themselves talk. If he stayed quiet long enough, this man would reveal more than he intended. The man smirked. "I know you're smart. I know you see what's happening here. You step on the wrong toes, and suddenly, things don't go your way. Happens all the time." The captain finally spoke, his voice steady. "And who exactly do these wrong toes belong to?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "See, that's the thing. You already know. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in here." He closed the folder with a soft thud. "But you're going to have to decide real soon how much more you want to push. Because I promise you, the people you're after, they don't just push back, they erase." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving those final words hanging in the air. Erase. The captain leaned forward, pressing his fingers against his temple. He was getting too close to something big, something that had people nervous. But that also meant there was a way out. If they wanted to silence him, that meant he still had a voice. He just had to figure out how to use it before they took away the chance. Meanwhile, outside the precinct, another story was unfolding. A journalist had been tipped off about an unusual arrest, a high-ranking FBI captain held without explanation. She had spent years uncovering corruption, exposing cover-ups that those in power hoped would stay buried. When she heard the name, she knew this wasn't just another routine story. This was something deeper. As she made her way toward the station, she had no idea just how dangerous the truth she was about to uncover really was. Back inside the holding cell, the captain sat in silence, his mind racing. He had always known the system had cracks, but now he was seeing just how deep they ran. He had spent his career hunting down criminals, but the real danger had been lurking within the walls of law enforcement itself. The people who had sworn to protect and serve were the same ones pulling the strings behind closed doors. And now he was their latest problem to eliminate. The journalist, meanwhile, had parked a few blocks away from the precinct, careful not to draw attention. She had learned long ago that asking too many questions in the wrong places could get doors slammed in her face. Or worse. But this was different. An FBI captain being held with no charges, no official statements, no media coverage. That wasn't just strange, it was intentional. She grabbed her phone and dialed a trusted source within the department. The voice on the other end was hushed, hesitant. "You didn't hear this from me," the officer whispered, "but something's off. He's supposed to be transferred. No paperwork, no explanation. Just gone." The line went dead before she could ask another question. A chill ran down her spine. She had seen enough cover-ups to know when one was in motion. If they moved him without a record, he might never resurface. Back inside the station, the captain heard the shuffle of boots approaching again. This time, it wasn't just one officer. 2 men unlocked his cell, their expressions stiff, their grit on his arms firm as they hauled him up. "Where are you taking me?" he asked, though he already knew he wouldn't get a straight answer. Orders came down. "You're being moved," one of them muttered. The captain didn't resist, but he took in every detail: the direction they were headed, the lack of security cameras in this part of the station, the way the halls grew quieter the farther they walked. This wasn't protocol. This was something else. The journalist, now standing outside, watched as an unmarked car pulled up near the side entrance. A door opened, and 2 figures stepped out, waiting. Their stance, their unspoken authority, it was clear they weren't just regular officers. Something was happening, and if she didn't act now, it might be too late. Inside, the captain was led through a back hallway, his instincts screaming at him. He had seen too many cases end this way, when someone knew too much, when they got too close. They disappeared, silenced, forgotten. Not this time. As the officers guided him toward the exit, he glanced at the locked door they were approaching. His pulse quickened. If he walked through that door, there was no telling if he'd ever come back. But just as they reached it, a loud voice rang out from the front of the building. "Stop. I need to speak to the captain." The journalist. A pause, a shift in the air, and then everything exploded at once. The moment the journalist's voice cut through the tension, the captain felt the officer's grips tighten. For a split second, no one moved. The unmarked car outside idled, its driver waiting for the transfer that was never supposed to be questioned. The air inside the station was thick with uncertainty. One wrong move, and everything could spiral out of control. One of the officers guiding him hesitated, glancing toward the front. The other, however, wasn't so easily shaken. "Keep moving," he muttered under his breath, his grip like iron. The captain knew then, this wasn't an arrest. It never was. It was an erasure. A cover-up unfolding in real time. But the journalist wasn't backing down. She stepped forward, flashing her credentials, her voice steady. "I have reason to believe this transfer is happening without proper documentation. If that's the case, then this is an illegal detainment." That was enough to make some heads turn. A few officers behind the front desk exchanged uncertain glances. The station wasn't empty, and not everyone inside was part of the conspiracy. Some still believed in the badge for the right reasons. The officer leading the transfer clenched his jaw. "This isn't your business," he snapped. "Step back." But she didn't. Instead, she pulled out her phone. "Then you won't mind if I start recording, right? If everything's by the book." She held the screen up, the small red light blinking as it captured the scene. The tension snapped. The officer at the captain's side suddenly yanked him forward, moving fast, trying to push him toward the back door before things escalated any further. But the journalist's voice rang out again. "Is that how you treat a federal officer? Because I think the public would love to know what's really happening here." That did it. The hesitation spread like a wildfire. More officers in the station started paying attention now. A few even took a step closer, drawn in by the unexpected confrontation. Then, another twist. A new voice cut through the room, calm but carrying undeniable authority. "That's enough." Everyone turned. Standing at the far end of the room was an older man in a dark suit, someone who wasn't supposed to be here. The captain recognized him instantly. Deputy Director Carter, his superior, the man overseeing major investigations, including the very one that had likely landed him in this mess. For the first time since his arrest, the captain felt a different kind of fear settle in his chest. Carter stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Release him." The officers hesitated. "Sir, we—" "Now." Slowly, reluctantly, the grip on the captain's arms loosened. The cuffs were unlocked, falling away with a metallic click. But just as his wrists were freed, Carter turned his gaze toward him, his eyes sharp. "Come with me," he ordered. "Now." The journalist opened her mouth to protest, but Carter's expression silenced her before she could get a word out. The captain exchanged a quick glance with her, one filled with unspoken questions. But he had no choice. He had to follow Carter. Because whatever was about to happen next, it was bigger than anything he had imagined. The captain followed Carter through the precinct, his heart pounding with every step. The way his superior had shown up at the last second, the way he had effortlessly taken control of the situation, none of it sat right. This wasn't a rescue. This was something else. They entered a private office, the door shutting heavily behind them. Carter gestured for him to sit, but the captain remained standing. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" the captain asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Carter exhaled, moving toward the desk. "You should have stopped digging." There it was. A quiet confirmation of everything he already knew. This entire operation, the captain continued, the traffic stop, the arrest, the transfer, you were behind it. Carter met his gaze, unflinching. "Not directly, but I knew about it." The captain clenched his fists. "Why?" Carter leaned against the desk, his face unreadable. "Because you got too close to something bigger than you realized. And people in power don't like to be exposed." The captain's mind raced. He had been investigating corruption in the police force, uncovering ties between certain officers and a larger network that extended beyond the department. Bribes, falsified reports, illegal surveillance, things that could take down careers. But he hadn't expected it to reach this high up. "And you?" the captain pressed. "Where do you stand in all of this?" Carter was silent for a long moment. Then finally he spoke. "I'm the reason you're still breathing." The words sent a chill through the room. "They wanted you gone," Carter continued. "Not just out of the precinct, not just off the case. Gone." The captain stared at him, trying to read between the lines. "Then why stop them? If you're part of it, why pull me out at the last second?" Carter's expression darkened. "Because they made a mistake. They moved too fast. And now, because of that reporter outside, because of the attention they've drawn, they can't just make you disappear. Not without consequences." The captain took a slow breath, absorbing the truth. He wasn't free because Carter had saved him out of loyalty. He was free because the people in power couldn't afford the backlash of making him vanish. At least, not yet. Carter pushed a folder across the desk. "This is everything you need to clear your name. Evidence that the charges against you were fabricated, enough to shut down this part of the operation." The captain didn't reach for it. "And what about the rest of it? The people at the top?" Carter's expression remained cold. "You let this go. Take the win. Walk away." The captain held his gaze. "You really think I'm just going to let this slide?" Carter sighed. "That's why I tried to warn you. You think you know the enemy, but you don't. You're playing chess while they're already moving the next game pieces." He paused. "I can't protect you after this." The room was suffocating with unspoken truths. The captain knew what Carter wasn't saying out loud. If he kept pushing, if he went after the bigger names, there wouldn't be another last-minute rescue. Next time they would make mistakes. But the final twist came just as Carter stood to leave. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then frowned. "That reporter, she's gone." The captain stiffened. "What do you mean, gone?" Carter's jaw tightened. "She left the precinct, but she never made it home." A cold realization settled over the room. They had underestimated the enemy. And now someone else had taken the fall. The weight of Carter's words sank in. The journalist, gone. The captain's pulse quickened as he considered the implications. She had been the only outsider who knew the truth, the only one bold enough to confront it head-on. And now, just like that, she had disappeared. The captain reached for his phone, dialing her number. Straight to voicemail. He tried again, pacing the room, but the result was the same. His gut told him this wasn't a coincidence. Someone had made their move. "I have to find her," he muttered, already heading for the door. Carter's voice stopped him. "Think for a second. If they took her, what do you think is going to happen when you go charging in without a plan?" The captain turned, his eyes burning with frustration. "I don't have time to sit around." Carter sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, if she's alive, they'll use her as leverage. And if you go after her now, they'll be expecting it." He paused before adding, "But I might know where to start looking." The captain hesitated. Despite everything, despite the layers of deception, Carter was still giving him something. A chance. Minutes later, they were in an unmarked car, heading toward the industrial outskirts of the city. Carter didn't explain how he knew where to go, and the captain didn't ask. The fewer words spoken, the better. As they pulled up near an abandoned warehouse, the captain spotted movement. A dark SUV parked by the entrance. 2 figures standing guard. This wasn't just some random disappearance, she was being held here. Carter cut the engine. "You go in there alone, you won't make it out." The captain exhaled, gripping the door handle. "Then I guess I'd better not go in alone." Carter hesitated. Then, with a quiet curse under his breath, he reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a spare weapon. "We do this my way," he said. They moved carefully, sticking to the shadows. The guards were professional, trained, alert. But they weren't expecting Carter and the captain to work together. Within minutes, they were inside. The journalist sat in a chair, her hands bound, but her eyes were sharp, defiant. As soon as she saw the captain, relief flashed across her face. But before she could speak, a voice echoed from the darkness. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" A man stepped forward, someone the captain recognized. A high-ranking official, one of the untouchables. Everything clicked into place. The arrest, the cover-up, the journalist's disappearance. It had all been orchestrated by someone operating above the law. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, Carter did something the captain didn't expect. He raised his gun. "You've gone too far," Carter said, his voice steady. The official's expression barely changed. "And you haven't." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, the captain moved. A swift takedown, a struggle, and within seconds, the guards were down. The journalist was freed, and just like that, the power shifted. By morning, the evidence was in the right hands. The corruption exposed. The people who had tried to erase the truth, facing justice for the first time. Carter disappeared after that. No goodbyes, no explanations, just gone. Maybe he had always been caught between both sides, or maybe he knew he had made his choice. The captain and the journalist stood outside the precinct, watching the chaos unfold as arrests were made. "You still think this is over?" she asked. The captain shook his head. "Not even close." But for now, they had won, and that was enough.